You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster, Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SEBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SEBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SEBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SEBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back with episode 1 of your bi-weekly options extravaganza, known hither and yon as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever-scintillating, ever-compelling network upon which so many of you are binging. I want to thank all of you who take the time out there to rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It clearly does help. There's clearly a correlation. We have a lot of reviews, obviously, but the more the merrier, and especially the newer ones do seem to play nicely with the old algorithm. So if you do like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing so new folks can continue to discover the content. We can keep cranking out shows for another, 16 plus years. That sounds terrifying to say out loud, but fun nonetheless out there. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to join us where the true partay happens, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Congratulations. Who was Ostego, who won the Pro Trading Crate last week. Of course, you get access to those giveaways, listeners. You get live access to everything we do here on the network. You get access to everything on the old podcast feed, exclusive podcast feed, which is coming in on 200 episodes worth of shows now. So that's a lot of content. You better buckle up if you go to the Pro, because we will satiate your need for options content. Of course, you get to participate in all of our Pro Q&As going forward, all of our options oddities. You can heckle us live during the show. All your questions get bumped to the top of the list. All that fun and a whole bunch more. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more about that. And you know what, listeners? It's that time. We are kicking off our broadcast week. Hope you all had a great weekend. Relaxing. It's fun. Time to get back in the trenches, see what these markets have in store for us. But before we do all that, you know, it's our kickoff to the broadcast week. We like to start things off, warm you up, stretch you out, get your blood pumping a little bit, get maybe the brain cells firing a little bit too. And the best way we know how to do that, listeners, is with a little bit of 80s wrestling trivia. So let's get to it. All right, there we go. Can't do wrestling trivia without some appropriate music. All right, I am joined, of course, on the show for the Monday episode by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, as well as by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. They are both ready. They're both hovering over their buzzers as they speak for today's bit of 80s wrestling trivia. All right, gentlemen, today's today's contestant, if you will. He's a known guy from the 80s. I would not say he's super top tier. He's not like a Hogan or an Andre or a Macho or Warrior, those kind of guys that everyone even knows. I won't even say he's like a Jake the Snake, which we did last week, whose fame has crept well outside of the world of WWE as well. I think you kind of had to be an 80s wrestling person to know who this guy was. But if you were around in the 80s, you definitely knew this guy. He was definitely, I would say, kind of a decent mid-carder. He wasn't around for too long, but what he was around for, folks tended to like him, I think. That little bit of clarification out of the way. Today's wrestler, his real name, listeners, was James Morris. Can you guess who am I talking about? What was his ring name? James Morris. It's either really easy or really hard. I say again, James Morris. Uncle Mike,
don't be Googling, Sebastian.
Uncle Mike, take a buzz. Take a buzz. I know you want to swing at this one. If I said the guy's real name is James Morris, take a guess.
All right, buzz.
Okay, there you go. What do you got?
I'll go with the Big Boss Man.
Oh. No, that is not the answer. All right, Mr. Meatball. Take a swing at it.
Hint?
Was that?
Can I ask for a hint?
Yeah.
Too late.
Yeah, his first name is James. So if you were
Jim.
Okay.
Oh, Hillbilly Jim.
Yes. I thought this would be really easy or really hard. Turns out it was really hard. Yes, Hillbilly Jim is James Morris out there. Yes, a solid mid-carder. Some folks really liked him in the 80s, so he had his moments out there. I'll give you a couple of bonus questions here, see if you can get them. So Sebastian gets that one. That was the challenging one out there, so a fun one. So that'll be the full point question. Then we'll give some half point bonus ones. Oh, here's a bonus one for you, whoever wants to get it. How many titles did Hillbilly Jim hold in the WWE total? How many titles did he have?
Buzz.
Go for it.
2. One is the Intercontinental Champ and one is the Tag Team Champ.
Interesting. Good guess, but no, wrong. Mr. Meatball, can you steal?
I'm going to say 0.
Yes, he had 0 titles. That kind of surprised me. I thought for sure Hillbilly Jim would have at least one along the way. He would have flirted with IC or something, but no. 0
no, hold on
belts.
A second on that one. Hold on a second. Does Manager of the Year count as a title?
No, that's not.
He was Manager of the Year.
No. I mean belts. How many belts did he have? He did not have a single belt.
Yeah, I mean, when 2 was wrong, and I just thought it was a trick question. That was where
You're picking up what I'm putting down today. I'll give you that.
I was like, it's got to be a trick question.
Yes, it's either going to be 0 or some absurd number, and you went with 0. So well done. I want more bonus ones. Sebastian, taking the points today. This is kind of a challenging one. How did Hillbilly Jim get his start on like WWE programming? How did they show him off for the first time? What was he doing? What was he?
I mean, what was his first gimmick?
No, he was a hillbilly. They started him off as a hick, but how did he make his debut on WWE TV? Like, what was he doing? Okay, go for it. Uncle Mike, you know this one.
He was a fan in the stands.
Yes, exactly. He was a fan.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. That surprised me as well. So doing this research for this little segment has actually been kind of fun for me. So you knew that, but you didn't know Hillbilly Jim. I thought for sure when I kept saying James that you would jump on it right away.
James, like that. That's when it dinged in my head.
The only hint is his name is James. That's about all he can do with Hillbilly Jim. All right, so half point for TOSAW. So he manages to redeem himself a little bit. 1.5 for the Meatball. We'll have to add it up. I'm pretty sure you guys were pretty neck and neck coming into today, but I will go check and see. So 1.5 for the Meatball, half point for the Uncleist of Mike. Did you know any of that Hillbilly Jim trivia? Hit us up. Let us know, listeners, as we keep on going right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And it seems like we're back in the green again today after kind of having a nice Friday back in the green. I know the Rock Lobster was kind of lamenting yet another B-named Fed governor interjecting his opinion out there and swaying markets. That is kind of what's happening now. We're still kind of seeing the remnant spillover of that into a little bit of green on the old screen again today. The S&P up about a third of a point. Now, that said, we are off the highs. We got up to nearly over 40.75, about 40.77, a little right around 40.60 or so right now. So retreating a bit off the highs. Will this be another day where we end up closing red on the day, or it will be another day where they're just pausing in the buying fest before they rally it again? Either way, we're up about 100 or so handles, and we were hanging out around 39.5 not too long ago out there. So the market, they don't need much of an excuse to rally this thing. They just need a Fed governor to chirp in their ear and whisper affirmations to them. That's kind of what they got over the course of the past week. So they're taking that bit in the teeth and running with it again. That means all of our vol friends down since our last show on Thursday. VIX, when we kicked off the show, is at about an 1880, puts it down a little over 1.5 points, about 1.6 points from where it was on Thursday. VVIX, the vol of vol, at a 76, down another 2 points. Getting into that range, listeners, it was a 75 on vol views. That range where you gotta kind of sit up and pay attention a little bit. Even, as I said on vol views on Friday, even in the pre-pandemic era when things were, dare I say it, normal in the world of vol, when VVIX got down to around a 75, that was the level we had to start really sitting up and paying attention, because it probably wasn't going to hang out there for too long. Chances are it would increase. So that's something probably to keep an eye on now as well. But hey, we are in weird who knows, mid-pandemic times. So who knows exactly if the past is prologue for vol anymore. But in the past, this would definitely be a time when you would start to sit up and stroke your chin and say, maybe I want to look at some potentially long vol strategies in this low vol of vol market. In terms of VXX 1080, when we kicked off the show, down about 7/10 of a point from where it was on Thursday's show. UVXY back below the 5 handle, 4.5, down half a point. This thing needs to reverse split. It is, for all intents and purposes, pretty useless right now. Just kind of vacillating around the 5 handle for months. SVIX 18.5, up a point from where it was on Thursday's show. UVIX 1580, down a little over 2, about 2.2 points. And VolQ, aka the at the money vol of the NASDAQ 100, down a little over 2, almost 2.5, about 2.4 points from where it was on Thursday's show. All right, a lot to unpack there. Mr. Meatball, as our winner of our trivia game, you get to go first. Do you have any enduring memories of the mid-carder known as Hillbilly Jim? Or do you take offense to that? You think he was better? And then B, what's light up your tape in this kind of weird rally day? I really liked him. I thought he was a fun character. And I want to say one of the first feuds I really remember was him feuding, I think, with the Big Boss Man. And, I think he was a tag team partner with somebody interesting. I don't remember who. Mike T, do you remember who his tag team partner was? Because it was somebody that had nothing to do with, they used to tag team guys in like the weirdest ways, right? You'd have like... I know he started off doing vignettes with Hogan. Maybe they tagged a bit early in the days. Yeah, maybe.
So what his tag team, his trademark tag team match was at WrestleMania 3. I believe it was him versus King Kong Bundy, and they each had 2 midget wrestlers as their tag team partners. It was a 6-man tag match.
Oh, he was part of the mini medals.
I don't know if they're supposed to be called midgets or not, so I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but that's what they were called at the time.
I didn't remember that, but I really did like Hillbilly Jim. He was a great character. Always seemed friendly and nice and kind, and I think they could have developed the character more, because you look at what they've done with some of the hit characters in the 2000s and so on, and they've been able to do some really cool stuff. So he was really the legend that made that all happen. Big fan of him. Liked him on Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling. I remember him playing the role of kind of like a know nothing, if you will. But just a really funny character, kind of careless and happy, which was a fun thing. Way better than the Repo Man.
Oh, let us never speak of the Repo Man again. And while you were talking, Mr. Meatball, I did tally it up. So you have closed the gap. Coming into today, it was 3.5 points for TOSAW, 2 points for you. You have now gained 1.5 points today. So it's 3.5 points for you and 4 for TOSAW. So you are closing the gap, sir. Well done.
I'm excited.
When I say James
next time. Where's my GI Joe?
I was going to ask you, we got to get your address. Send me your address here in the Skype and I will send it to you. I was just going to bug our producers. Like, we got to get his address. I saw it here in my studio today. I was like, we need to ship this out. That is a major award. It should not be sitting here.
It is.
All right. So put it in the Skype and I'll make sure you get your major award, sir. And on top of that, what is catching your eye in the markets today?
Well, we tested major support at 40.80 and failed. We are now up about 15, trading 40.60. Really, it's being pulled. The market, the S&P is being pulled up by the NASDAQ, which is being pulled up by Apple, which at one point was up close to 3.5%. Meanwhile, the Russell 2000 is getting punched. It's down 1.3%. It's a weird day. The NASDAQ is up 0.75%, while the Russell's down 1.3%. Very unusual. You have the Dow and the S&P kind of right in the middle, up marginally. For a moment there, vol looked like it was going to go red today on a Monday, but they've come in and bought it up a little bit. The market looks a little soft. You got to wonder, like, how much more upside is there ahead of Powell talking tomorrow and non-farms, with this having run back, bounced off the 200, back through the 50, and all the way up to this kind of 40.80 level that was a key line in the sand for the market. So I've been kind of watching that. I'm watching, retail having a rough day and materials and having a rough day, while again, XLK is just, to the moon. So banks are down. Banks are marginally down. Kind of, I'm going to guess advancers, decliners. There's more decliners than advancers. We're just being held up by the fact that Apple's up nearly 3%. Amazon is up marginally. Google's up nearly 2%. Microsoft up 1.2%, and even Meta up near 0.5%. So you've got some bullishness there, and that's really where I think the green that you're seeing on your screen today is coming from.
Hey, right. This pop in Apple it's up 11 handles over the span of the last 4 or 5 sessions. I mean, it was down around 140. 144 last week, and then they have rallied it up to 155.25 now. So popping hard out there in Apple territory. Is that enough to move it up in our top 10 today? I guess we'll find out in a little bit, listeners. Before we do that, Mr. Uncle Mike, you knew that Hillbilly Jim started as a fan. You've guessed Hillbilly Jim. I can't count how many times you've guessed him for other wrestlers as long as we've been doing this stuff here. So I thought for sure you were just going to throw Hillbilly. I think you guessed Hillbilly Jim for Jake the Snake a week or two ago. So you've thrown out Hillbilly Jim many times, except for today, when today was the day. I thought for sure if I get Hillbilly Jim, TOSAW is definitely going to get this one. Sometimes I craft ones for you, and you didn't swing. Even when I said James, I thought for sure. I couldn't say Jim. That would make it too easy. All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, if you have any other enduring memories, you remember he came as a fan. Obviously, you're part of the Hillbilly Jim fan club. Do you have any thoughts there? And then B, what's lighting up your tape in, at least so far, an Uncle Mike type of day, at least except for the Russell 2000.
A couple things. Next time we do this, I should get a hint that Sebastian doesn't get, because he clearly got one today that I didn't get. But I
just said James. That's all I said. You both heard the same hint. There was no skullduggery.
When Sebastian asked for a hint, you said his name is James.
Oh, I just repeated what I said before. I said James. I just emphasized it again.
No, but then you said as a hint, though. So anyway.
Okay, I didn't know I had to preface his name.
Mark, you can knock me down to 0.75 of a point because Mike's a crybaby.
I just repeated his name. There was no extra hint allowed, other than maybe my emphasis on a different syllable.
This is all a big conspiracy. You Marks are in it together. I knew it. Anyway, with Hillbilly Jim, I liked Hillbilly Jim a lot, actually, and so this is my enduring memory of Hillbilly Jim. I had a cousin. She was just learning to talk at the time when Hillbilly Jim was popular in the mid to early 80s, or like 83, 84, or like 84, 85, around that time. And she was 2 years old, and she had a neighbor, and the neighbor looked amazingly like Hillbilly Jim. And so without her being told or anything like that. She just said, "Oh, it's Hillbilly Jim." It was amazing. Now, that just shows the power of professional wrestling, of what the golden age of the WWF was back in that day. Because do you really think that like a 2-year-old today would say, "Oh, he looks like Roman Reigns," or whoever a WWE wrestler is today?
I'm more confused.
No way.
Where were you living where your neighbors looked like Hillbilly Jim?
Chicago suburbs.
Oh, okay. A lot of overalls out there in the Chicago suburbs.
Yeah, it was in the city of Aurora, Illinois. It wasn't my neighbor; it was my cousin's neighbor, and so that's one memory with which I have about Hillbilly Jim. And then for some reason today, since we've talked about him, this song keeps going through my head. Don't go messing with a country boy, country boy, country boy. So that song's going through my head. That was his entrance music. And I remember Hillbilly Jim also had a couple of relatives that he helped get into the business. He had Uncle Elmer and Cousin Junior. And so a lot of good memories about good old Hillbilly Jim. With that, Hillbilly Jim, hopefully he was a buyer earlier today, and maybe he sold at the top. Hillbilly Jim might be a good trader, let's say. I would imagine he would be. But he might be more of a commodity guy, but who knows? With that being said, markets today, Mark's right. We did go up to around the 40-80 level. We did not pass it. And what I think it boils down to right now is that doves equals bulls, hawks equal bears. And over the course of the next couple of days, we'll see what Powell has to say. And then with non-farm coming out on Friday this week, we'll see if bad news equals good news. It is that kind of a market because the Fed has their hands in this. It's kind of funny. 2023 is the host of two things, arguably, potentially the most predicted recession in the history of the planet, and arguably the most Fed-driven market in the history of the planet. So that's what it's boiling down to right now. And I almost wish I had my Apple collars on like I did back in the day. That would have made for a fun episode today, but still have it as a holding, but not quite like it was back 10 years ago on the show when you guys would rip me and tell me how I had too much Apple exposure. But nonetheless, it is always.
You were right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said, Mike, you were right.
That was one I was right on. Not all of them. Mark still busts my chops about Cisco, but that was one of them. But yeah, it's always fun to watch Apple going up. Good things typically tend to happen when Apple goes higher. There's a saying back in the 70s, what's good for General Motors is good for America. And usually, from what I can tell, what's good for Apple is typically good for the S&P 500 a lot of times. Final thing that I'm looking at right now, we are down slightly in the 10-year note today. Not a ton of movement there. I think that's just bonds are kind of in wait-and-see mode to see what the Fed is going to say this week and basing it on inflation. And that is what I am seeing today.
Definitely. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Market doesn't like it when Apple is down. They don't know what to do with themselves on the day when Apple is red. That's why they're popping it yet again. I guess they are the new GM for the modern era out there. Let's keep on rolling and see what's good out here in today's market. Is this kind of mostly rally now, maybe lightening up kind of rally day? Is this good? Is this conducive for some volume? Let's find out. VIX looking pretty active, all things considered. You don't usually see a lot of paper on the tape on days when we're mostly green to start the day. But we're seeing that right now. 439,000 contracts on the tape out there in VIX land today, listeners. The ADV 664, so ticking a little bit back in the right direction. Looks like the big dog out there today are 36,000 of the April 19 puts. That's leading the dance out there, followed by 22,000 of the March 22 calls, 22. So, interesting. VIX doing more paper than I thought. I thought we'd be somewhere around 250,000 contracts right now. SPY also looking pretty active, 5.5 million contracts, ADV 9 million. That one's less surprising. All you need is a day that ends in Y to have SPY putting up some paper, and that is the case again today. The S, you know what the deal is with the S. The S, ever the subject of debate and controversy and discussion these days, particularly on the zero DTE trend. 1.61 million contracts on the tape right now in the S, ADV 2.65 million. Let's look at that. How much of that is 0 day right now? Well, the top 20, all 20, Once again, going the way of the dodo today. If we go out to the top 40, I see 1, I see 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 6, actually 7. Wow, 7. 7 in the top 40. Not expiring today. That's actually high. Usually we see 5 or less. So intriguing out there. If I do this, the old Flowmaster isn't here, but I'll fire up his proprietary non-zero day scan just for us here. And the most active non-zero day contract listeners, 7,911 of the 39.5 puts going out tomorrow. So again, when I say they're not expiring today, I'm not talking tons of long-term paper. There's a little bit of May going up, but that's really about it. Everything else is expiring tomorrow. So if you expand that horizon just to pretty much into tomorrow's session, that's pretty much all of your SPX top paper right now. Small caps, IWM, 347,000 contracts on the tape out there. So this little bit of a rout, which you're right, it is kind of weird out there, Mr. Meatball. IWM off about 1.3% right now. So small caps taking it on the chin today and not exactly translating to a lot of paper. Usually an active day in IWM will translate to some decent paper. The ADV is 803,000 contracts out there right now. Again, we're only at about 347 right now in small caps. And the Qs is a day that ends in Y, so they're putting up numbers. They're already 2/3 of their way to their ADV because they're hanging out right about 2 million contracts. ADV about 3 million. So the math out there pretty easy, listeners. Let's keep on rolling out to the top 10. Let's see what's lighting up our tape out there. Let's see if it's a decent single name day. And the answer is it is. 226,000 contracts on the tape today. That's what it costs you to break into the top 10. That gets you to good old Softy. Another rally day for Softy out there, up 3 points. 258 and about a third. So apparently all this AI brouhaha is making up for the fact that the DOJ is hanging over their every word out there right now with that whole Activision deal. So intriguing stuff. They have rallied nicely from their 214 level they hit back in November, or even more recently. They kicked off the year at 222. They're trading 258 and about a third right now. So obviously they're still off their highs for the year back in April of last year, about 316, but still a nice little rally out here in all things MSFT. Most of this driven by the furor over all things AI. Let's go to number 9. And hey, our old friend from the Chip Zone back in the top 10 after taking an extended hiatus during most of earnings season. It's AMD, number 9. 245,000 contracts. AMD, I haven't had a chance to look them up for a while because they haven't been in our top 10 for a while. 82.12 right now, up about 60 cents. So nice little run for them. Let's see. They bottomed out at about $54.50, also back in October. October was kind of the dearth for a lot of the chip names out there. NVIDIA, same thing. AMD back in our top 10 today. Good to see them back. Chip Zone coming a little early today. Number 8. Ever since their earnings and this whole AI war kind of kicked off, they've been a perennial top 10er again. This is Alphabet, the artist formerly known as Google. 95 and a third, up about 1 3/4 right now. Good for about 250,000 contracts, 255,000 contracts. So decent paper for good old Google. Number 7, ever since they kind of blew through 200 in the wrong direction and now have been threatening it again, they've been a perennial top 10er as well. This is Meta. 304,000 contracts today, about $1.30 to the green today, trading right around 186.5. Number 6, is it a meme stock? Is it a gold miner? Is it a movie chain? Is it all of the above? It is AMC. Number 6, 329,000 contracts, off about 14 cents, trading right around 644 right now. Let's see what kind of day they've had out there. About a 40-cent range, 675 on the high, 635 on the low. So nothing out of the normal here for AMC, but good enough here for number 6 and making another appearance in our top 10, which is kind of interesting. Number 5, we'll go back to the Amazonians, 95 and a quarter, up about a third of a buck right now. Let's see, they got as high as 96.5 today, so they have given that up a little bit right now. They're off the highs like the rest of the market appears to be right now as well. In fact, they've sold off pretty hard. They actually, about 96.5, and then they've sold off straight down to where they are right now. So they're coming for Amazon a little bit, but good for 380,000 contracts and the number 5 overall spot on our top 10. What's knocking Amazon down a bit? Let's find out. It is Snap. Number 4. Haven't seen them in a couple of weeks, but they're back in here. I think since their earnings. That's usually when they show up. Then they kind of go away for the rest of the calendar until it's earnings time again. But Snap, back on the old radar. Looks like all this brouhaha over potentially banning TikTok shining a little bit of love on Snap, up $1.25 today, nearly 12%, trading $11.90. Are you buying what they're selling out here, listeners? You think this is perhaps the moment where the worm turns? It did seem like TikTok stole a lot of the thunder with that same audience, that tween audience that Snapchat dominated for a little while. TikTok kind of stole it all. Is this going to kick Snap back into high gear, or are they going to be like another spectacle or the camera drone that they released and they kind of just a little bit of a spurt of action, and that's about it? Intriguing stuff. Good for 381,000 contracts. Let's look really quickly. Let's see what the hot trade is in Snap right now. We got to get going. We're coming up against it already. Let's go to Snap. Yeah, 26,000 of the March 12s expiring this week on the 10th. So we're at 1193. These are pretty much at the money calls, listeners. They've gone up 26,000 times this week, including a big block of 1,100. Looks like somebody dumped them for 42 cents. So folks taking a little bit of an opportunity to do some overriding out here. They've been trading all over the place. Someone bought them for $0.25. So maybe that same guy buying and selling them, making a nice 17 cents in the span of about an hour or so out there. Number 3, back to the chip zone we go, listeners. It's NVIDIA. They've had a nice little run over the last couple of weeks. Of course, Congress talking up all their subsidies for chips and kind of crushing it on the earnings front. And also dipping their toes in this whole AI war has all been enough to really lift NVIDIA quite a bit. They are up, let's see, over the last month, they're up about 13% or 26, almost 27 handles. Trading 237.60 right now. Actually selling off a little bit today, off about 0.5%. After rallying hard again, up to about 242. They've had a range of 242.5 on the high, listeners, and the low was 236.75. So NVIDIA doing some living today, which is why they're hanging out at number 3, 442,000 contracts. Number 2 is interesting. We haven't seen this name at number 2 in quite some time. It takes a lot to knock this one off the top. If you come for the throne, you better come big and not miss, because Tesla likes his number 1 spot. Today, number 2. 194.25 is where Tesla's hanging out, I should say, off about $3.50. They got as high as about almost 199, about 198.60 today. So, and the low is 192.30. So again, another day that ends in Y, an impressive range for Tesla and an impressive total, 1.09 million, but not enough to do it, listeners. I kind of hinted at it earlier in the show. Would this big move in Apple be enough to take the number 1 spot back? And the answer is yes. The big dog back on top, at least for today. Apple had kind of pretty much surrendered that number 1 spot to Tesla. It's only been, I can count on probably one hand, the number of times over the last 6 months that Apple has been in the number 1 spot. And we can add another one today, 1.18 million contracts, listeners. Apple's still hanging out right around 155, up $4 today. My goodness. Oh, I guess Goldman came out with an upgrade today. They put them as a buy. They said after years of sitting on the sidelines of Apple, now Goldman likes them. That's what's attributing to this $4 rally in Apple, and good for about 1.2 million contracts out there. So one of the busier days we've seen in Apple in quite some time. Are we going to get to those April 175s we talked about in options oddities, listeners? Are those going to find? Someone's been loading up for beer on that 175 strike for a while. They tried it in February, didn't really come to pass. They're trying it again in April. Today, the big trade, my goodness, almost 100,000 of the March doubles, 155s expiring this week. This is kind of some of the old school paper in Apple we know and love, listeners. Folks loving themselves. That's the at-the-money strike now, so it makes some sense. But my goodness, 100,000 contracts. That is nothing to sneeze at. Let's see if there's anything to sneeze at in the earnings season. We'll get on into the odd block, listeners. Kind of coming into the tail end of earnings season, but there are still a lot of names set to pop off this week, including Dick's on Tuesday, BJ's on Thursday, a whole bunch of others in between. Campbell's Soup, you want some Super Bowl on Wednesday? We got it for you there, as well as ULTA and Oracle and Gap on Thursday. All sorts of fun. Dole, you want Pineapple Val? Got that for you on Tuesday, listeners. So there still are a lot of names to pop off out there. Let's see what we got here. In terms of earning move results here, we only got a couple of names popping off before the bell today. In terms of what's coming up, listeners, there are still quite a few. You'd think for the tail end of the season, you would have, I don't know, just a handful of names out there to look at. But no, we've got pages yet again of tickers for you folks to review, including DocuSign coming up in about 3 days here on the 9th. They're after the bell. They were trading 1013 when we ran this report. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. They're trading 65. There we go. That makes more sense. 1013 would be Ampy right next to it. DocuSign, 6509 is where they were trading. They were pricing in 743. In the past, they moved 9 1/4. So that's a heck of a lot of extra juice out there. And DocuSign, this is another one, kind of had a nice little pop during the pandemic period, along with Zoom and some others. And then taking a little bit of heat of late. Let's see if that lesser amount of vol is merited or if they're kind of undercutting things out there. Let's go to Gap as well. Gap also on the 9th after the bell. 12 3/4 is where they were trading. They're pricing in about $1.20. In the past, they moved 85 cents. So more juice for Gap. Since we've been talking, though, this name has sold off. It was $12.77 when we ran this report, listeners, earlier this morning. Now it's $12.27. So sold off 50 cents already. So they are coming for Gap. Staying in that same area. Let's go to ULTA for the ladies' cosmetics out there. 9th after the bell. 522 even. So pricey name. I guess ULTA, another name, doesn't like its splits out there. They're pricing in, listeners, get this, $37.85. In the past, they've moved, $32.85. In the past, they've moved 20 1/4. That's a heck of a lot of extra juice. $12.64 worth of extra juice. Again, it is a $500 name, but still. That's a heck of a lot of extra juice. That's just a sampling. It's just a taste, listeners, of what awaits you there in our earnings report. We got a ton of names for you folks to check out. The earnings season right now, continuing to come in from its lofty heights of a few weeks ago when it was hanging out around 150%. Right now at 107%. Still above our long-term average of 92%, but you kind of had to know it was going to come in from that level, and it has. And in terms of earnings trades, no new ones going on the calendar today, but we are still tracking 67 long straddles and 47 long calendars for your earnings trading information, education, and enjoyment. You know where to go to find all that, listeners. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab, and it's all there for you for free as we keep on going right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, time to get weird, time to get wild, time to unleash the Eye of Sauron, see what it fixes its gaze upon. Let's kick things off down the back a week, listeners, to last week's Monday show. We profiled some line in the sand puts in good old KKR, ticker symbol appropriately enough, KKR. On the year, let's see, they hit a low of 41 3/4. They flirted with that level a couple of times in September, and then they got not quite that low, but in the mid-40s in June, and again in December. So they flirted with the mid-40s a couple of times this year. They hit their low in September of 41 3/4. The high 62 1/4. Like they flirted with this one a few times too. It's another name that's been very range bound over the year. They flirted with it in March, and then again in August, and then again in November, and then again recently in February. So if you wanted a nice range bound name, KKR did the business for it. Let's see if they did the business for these puts we saw last week, listeners. Last week on the show, we talked about someone drawing a line in KKR on the March doubles, the 55 puts expiring last Friday on the 3rd. They sold them right on the bid 10,000 times for 35 cents. At the time, when stock was 55.82, so it wasn't like they were really messing around too much. They were going straight for the at-the-money strike, going right to the fire out there. And you know what? They kind of had a sweat for this one all week. In fact, we had it on our docket on Options Oddities to talk about it as well. We never got back to it there. And we're going to talk about it on Thursday's show as well. And we never got to it there because the Flowmaster had a whole bunch of great trades he wanted to talk about as well. But they were flirting at the time with it on Thursday and again on Friday. They were hanging out right at that 55 strike. I think they were at 55.10 at one point. Let's see if they got below the 55 strike. They got to 55.08. So they kissed it. They kissed the 55 strike, listeners. And then on Friday, they were still kind of hanging out there, 55 and change. And then by the end of the day on Friday, these were still open, by the way, going all the way through Friday. They didn't take them off. The stock closed at 55.82. So they were sweating it coming into Friday. They were hanging out right around 55.08. And they might have been thinking, hey, I guess I'm buying myself some KKR stock. And then the stock rallied. And now looks like they are keeping all of that 35 cents 10,000 times. So the stock actually closed at 56.96. So I had a nice rally at the end of the day on Friday there. So I remember checking it in the middle of the day and it was still hanging out at 55 strikes. So nice rally for KKR. That allowed them to breathe easily. So they had to work for their 35 cents 10,000 times, aka 350 grand. Not bad work if you can get it, Mr. Meatball, but this one was not easy. They had to sweat for it a little bit. What say you, sir?
Yeah, definitely had to sweat a little bit. But win's a win.
I find if you sell premium and you don't have to sweat a little bit for it, it doesn't really feel the same. Is that your takeaway as well, sir? Or you like them nice and easy?
I prefer super easy, but that sweating happens a lot, right? It always seems like they try and go to your short strike
right there and hang out.
But that's that. Otherwise, you're doing the other thing. We'll see where they just unload 12-cent options, and yeah, you know what, you make 12 cents, but not a lot of dough.
You earned it. You earned it in sweat capital there. Yeah, I mean, I guess sleeping at night's overrated, sir. What fun is sleeping at night? You want to sweat it all the way to the close. I say that, but I was the guy on the SEBO floor who closed out all my positions going into expiration. I never was the guy who just came in for expiration day and just rode it out all short theta all day, just sweating profusely, chowing Tums, looking at the clock all day. I never was that guy. So kind of funny to me nonetheless. Let's keep on rolling out here. Let's go to some paper from today. I was looking like an upside day, so not surprising we're seeing some upside kind of paper, including, I think this is one we talked about before, but it's been quite some time. This is Emerson Electric, ticker symbol EMR. Oh, you know this one. They Fortune 500. They do a lot of engineering service for industrial and commercial firms. Trading right now $87.50 or close to it, 87.43. Up about $1.90, so up about 2.25 today. Nice little run for them today. On the year, let's see, a year ago, they were not much removed from where they are right now. They were 91.64, so a little bit higher. And then they rallied. They kissed 100 exactly back on March 30th. Then they sold off by, let's see, for most of the rest of the middle of the year at least. They got down to their 78.64 in July. Then they rallied it. They popped it in August up to about $91 again. Then right back down to their low for the year of September of 72.40. And then they rallied it again, right up to pretty much kissing 100 again. Yeah, it looks like they kissed it again in December and into the beginning of this year. They kicked off this year right around $98. So they had a nice start to the year. Then they started coming for it again. Got down to $82 just last week. And now they've rallied it over the last week about 5.5 handles or so. So what's going on out here in EMR today? It's like someone is liking this latest upswing, and they're thinking it's going to continue. The party shall continue in EMR. They came in this morning and scooped 5,000 of the April 92 halves. They paid $1.33. That's interesting because it's a fairly lofty level. It's a 22 vol. Also, it's about 8 cents through the offer. They offered at 125. Now, this is Emerson, so you might have to go outside the offer to get 5,000 done. That makes sense. But still, that shows a wee bit of, shall we say, fervor for these calls. The stock was a little bit higher, 87.84. So they're not liking today so far. It looks like they've retreated off their highs for the day. The high for the day was 88.41. So they bought these calls a little bit off the high. The earnings are on May 10th, so no earnings joy for them in this one, Mr. Meatball. What do you say about these ones? Emerson, swing for the fences call here, sir. Did these come up on your big money flow this week, sir?
What is that? What's the symbol there? EMR. EMR, that's right. Yeah, I've seen some call action in this one lately. It's having a nice day. It's up 2%. So, after getting absolutely punched on the 17th of January, this one is now making a nice break above the 200. This less than 2 months ago, this was a $100 stock. So, not completely impossible, I'll say.
Not completely impossible. They are lofty. They are a wee bit rich and not looking good so far today. So the first day indicator not in their favor. But again, they got time. They've got until April expiration. You like these listeners? April 92 halves and EMR? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know as we keep on rolling. Let's pay off another trade we talked about not too long ago. Almost a month ago, actually. This is February 9th. On the Odd Block, we talked about someone loving themselves with some calls in Air Sculpt Technologies, Inc., ticker symbol AIRS, AIRS. Not going to tell you where it's trading right now. That's a bit of a spoiler. But a year ago, it was trading close to its high for the year. It was $12.36 a year ago. Then a couple of weeks later, it hit its high for the year, $14.60. At the time we talked about it back about a month ago on the show, someone really loved the Feb 10s. They just couldn't get enough of these things. The stock at the time was $7.55, and they just had to buy up all they could get of the Feb 10s. They paid 15 cents, 2,173 times. Then they came back, they liked them and said, how are they now? We'll buy them again for 15 cents, 1,500 more times. And then we'll buy them again after that, 1,249 times more, also for 15 cents. A total of about 6,000 went up on the day. So they were loving themselves, some of these Feb 10s. I said the stock was $7.55, so it was not a small move that they were looking for in this stock. Again, it had been there within the year. It opened the year pretty much a year ago at about $14.60, so it can get there, but that was a long move, a big move from $7.55 or $7.50 where the stock was when they put these trades up. And then guess where the stock went out on expiration, listeners? Lower, $7.11 to be precise out there. So a bit of a rough road. Let's see if they ever flirted with it. It doesn't seem like they did. Let's see. This was on the February 9th. Yeah, they bought these pretty much the near-term high was $7.80, and it was on the 7th. So a couple of days before this trade went up. So they bought these calls near the high. It pretty much stock sold off ever since by the time of Feb expiration. It was already too late. Calls were still open and no joy for them. So they dropped, looks like about 90 grand if you add up all the volume that they bought on the strike that day. And you know what? It hasn't looked much better since then. The stock is off $3 over the last 6 months. It's off about $2 over the last month, $2.10 actually. So it's trading $5.59 right now. So it's even farther from that 10 strike. So Mr. Meatball, no love on these calls, and then no love subsequently for the stock. It has continued to sell off, sir. What are your thoughts on someone swinging for the fences and missing in airs?
Yeah, it definitely air sculpt technology. I mean, what are you going to do? It's had an ugly chart. It's sitting on the 50 right now. It did have a nice little run, but it's since pulled back. Maybe it's gonna, get a little pop here. They have earnings coming up on the 10th. That could draw something, but so far, no good on this one.
It's always good though, listeners. It's the strategy block. So let's get to it.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, everybody, it is time for Uncle Mike to hold court and explain to us just how deep his love goes for Hillbilly Jim. Uncle Mike, I can see you as a little kid dancing around in your overalls. Was that you, sir?
I didn't have overalls, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't dance around when Don't Go Messing with a Country Boy came on.
I could certainly see that as well, sir. So aside from your Hillbilly Jim love, sir, what else is on your radar for our listeners today?
Well, it is tax season right now, and I want to talk about something called a backdoor Roth IRA. Now, if you make too much money, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners do, they don't qualify for a Roth IRA. Meaning there's two types of IRAs. You have a traditional IRA and you have a Roth IRA. And a lot of times I've heard people say to me, oh, well, I don't qualify for a Roth IRA, so I'm not going to bother with it. Well, you might. And it's something called a backdoor Roth IRA. Now, it sounds shady, awful, evil, and sinister. However, it literally is on the IRS website. And that's the terminology that they gave it, not me. So what is a backdoor Roth IRA? So if you make too much money and you don't qualify to deduct your IRA, now what does that mean? There is no income limit for contributing money to a traditional IRA. However, there is an income limit to being able to deduct it from your taxes. There is a an income limit from deducting it from your taxes. And the way with which it works is if you're participating in an employer-based retirement account, such as a 401k, then you cannot make over a certain amount and still deduct the money from putting it into your traditional IRA. Now, with that being said, the first choice is if you're looking to maximize your deductions right now, then max out your 401k. However, if you want to still be able to participate in a Roth IRA, and let's say maybe you've already maxed out your 401k through your employer or your Roth 401k through your employer, and you want to be able to contribute to a Roth IRA, the way with which you can do that, and once again, this is assuming you make too much money, is you can put money into a traditional IRA. You don't get to deduct it, but you can put money into it. The second you have the money in there, you can immediately convert that traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. You did not get to deduct the money on the way in. However, you can still convert it. And by converting it, you essentially set up the identical thing of contributing to a Roth IRA. Now, why the IRS doesn't just get rid of the income restriction on Roth IRAs, I don't know, but who am I to question the IRS? But this is something with which you can do. Now, there's restrictions to it. If you have money in a traditional IRA already and you only want to convert what you actually put into your non-deductible IRA contribution, not going to be that simple. It gets a little bit hairy with that. But if you do not have any other IRA money and only 401k money, then what you can do is you can put money into a traditional IRA. You don't get to deduct it, but then you can convert it. And when you convert it, you don't have to pay taxes on it because you didn't get to deduct it in the first place. And you essentially just contributed to a Roth IRA. Now, with that, there's plenty of option strategies you can do in your IRAs. We've talked about that on the show many times, but you do have a limited amount of time with which you can make your IRA contributions for 2022. You have until a little over a month till you can still make a 2022 IRA contribution, whether it's IRA or Roth. Now, you can convert your IRA to a Roth IRA at any time, but if you want to make a 2022 contribution, you probably want to do it sooner rather than later and make sure that your tax guy is aware of it. So that way they can have an understanding of how it's going to work for your taxes. So with that, if you have my income's too high, I can't do a Roth IRA blues, that could be a solution for you. Back to you, Mark.
And now it's time for us to go back to Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. Really quickly, let's get to our question of the week. Let's also pay off last week's question of the week. Right to it, we asked you, zero DTE explosion SPX, is it increasing intraday volatility? And about 61% of you said yes, and around 39% of you said no. So leaning towards the yes camp. I tend to fall in that camp. Some folks have expressed some interesting opinions on looking at some of the flow data. And that said, I haven't crunched all the flow numbers on this, so there could be something to the fact that a lot of people are going far away from at the money and doing a lot of mitigated type strategies like iron condors and things, which wouldn't really be gamma additive at the end of the day, or they're selling gamma back to the market makers, so that shouldn't have the same impact. So there's a lot of contrary thoughts, but I still lean in the yes camp for a variety of reasons that I've espoused here on the network over the past few months. We're keeping with the 0-day trend for right now. Because one of the other questions all you folks keep asking us is, are we ever going to see single name 0-day contracts listed, in the big names like your Apples and Teslas and others? So we're asking you that same question. Time for you folks to answer your own question. Will we see them this year? Yes or no? Let's turn the tables on my compatriots here as well. Let's start with the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Meatball, A, are you surprised that our audience says that 0-day contracts are adding to intraday volatility? B, do you think our audience is voting yes or no that we will see single names like Apple listed in 0-day this year, sir?
I am not surprised because I think the answer is it is contributing to it. But do I think the audience is? The answer is no. They're never going to add daily Apple and stuff like that. I just don't see it coming. Not any time in the next year or two. What that would do to trading systems and the amount of work power you would need on a computer is just unfathomable. But yeah, so I'm going to say they're voting no.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. Are you surprised that folks voted that they are? I think you were on the yes side. So are you surprised that folks agreed with you and with me, the smart folks out there, and I guess with the meatball? And B, how you think our audience is voting for this whole will we see 0-day Apple this year, sir?
Not surprised, because a lot of times the audience and us agree. That's why we have such a successful show. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with the bandwidth needed on computers to actually make it work. So I'm going to go in the I don't know category. And I think it would be fun to watch, though, if it did happen.
Our audience is leaning no. They're a savvy bunch. They obviously listen to the show. I pointed out many times some of the challenges that lay ahead of something like this coming to pass this year. 62.5% of you saying no. 37.5% of you saying yes. We also got Gambler chiming in. Another more proof that the folks are listening to the shows. He says, daily 0 DTE options on single names presents too much risk. Imagine selling a 2 standard deviation strangle on Tesla, thinking you're safe, then Elon tweets something that moves the stock against you. Hashtag Gamma Bombs. Yes, that's a great hashtag. I'm fully endorse the Gamma Bombs hashtag. Someone should make that t-shirt. I say out loud to myself. We probably should do that. All right, good stuff from all of you. Let's keep, we're coming up against this. Let's do a combo of Around the Block as well as what you got cooking that may interest our listeners. There we go. A little bit of music to kick things off. Let's go to the greasiest of meatballs first. Mr. Meatball, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week until our Thursday episode? And then B, if folks want to dive deep into the glorious universe that is the pit, where should they go? What should they do?
We got Powell speaking. That's all you need to know.
Does the Fed really matter? Is this really a Fed-driven market? I think no. I'm coming down the other side of that. No more Fed.
Yeah, we got Powell speaking, and that is going to drive things. And then we have a pretty big, like I said, we got a pretty big event on Friday that I think will keep markets in an additional, for some interesting times going forward, called non-farm payrolls. So those are the 2 big things I'm watching. That and Dole earnings.
Yes, of course, Dole earnings. Who cannot keep an eye on Dole earnings? And the tasty, delicious Dole Whip. If you've never had it, listeners, you are missing out. Non-dairy treat, tastes just like ice cream. You'll swear it was a dairy thing. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week until our Thursday episode? And then B, where should folks go if they want to dive into the Uncle Mike Content Palooza?
Anything Fed. I mean, I'm not trying to be political here, but a t-shirt that I would probably buy would be Fed Lives Matter or Fed Speak Matters, because it's pretty much all that matters these days. And then the other thought that I had was that if the Options Insider were to open up a bar and grill, the Gamma Bomb would be a wonderful drink of some sort. And then if you are looking to see some more content from Uncle Mike, follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, or check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you are looking for a financial advisor who delves in the option product.
You got me expanding from T-shirts to bar and grill now, huh? Interesting. What other things would be on the Options Insider bar and grill menu? That's an interesting question. Maybe that'll be a poll question. We'll have coming up maybe a holiday week, a truncated holiday week to have some fun. That music means that's going to do it for the fun on this episode today. But don't you worry, listeners. We'll be back in a little bit with the Crypto Rundown, breaking down all things going on in the wild, woolly crypto markets. And there is a lot. I'll be joined by our guest, the CEO of Fortify, out there to break down all sorts of fun in the crypto markets. If you're on the pro side, you're listening live right now, hang out. We'll pump some fun stuff into the chat. Be back in a little bit with the Crypto Rundown. For all you on-demand folks, just wait till it hits the network. And then back again tomorrow. I do believe we got some schmo joining me in the hot seat tomorrow to answer your questions. I think he's called Uncle Mike. I don't know who this guy is, but you may like him. If you're on the pro side, get those questions in now. Always a popular session when Uncle Mike's join us. It probably will fill up fast. So get those questions in now. Use the members hotline. If you're not part of it, you want to participate in all that fun, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. Got to get on out of here. Back in a little bit with the crypto rundown, and then back again on Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by SEBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SEBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SEBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.